fruit tree and vine crops. Your book splits them apart. Real quick, before we talk, the difference between a fruit and a vegetable. Fruits have seeds in them. So fruit crops have a seed inside them. A vegetable is a leaf, root, or stem. That will be on your quiz, that question. And that makes a big difference between how we grow these crops. Okay, so remember, fruits have seeds in them. They take more work from the plant to produce than, let's say, a vegetable does. So we're not talking about veggie production now, we're splitting them up. So first of all, fruit trees and vine crops are also what we call perennial, which means they're plants that come back year after year. So for example, the opposite of a lettuce, right? Plant a lettuce, it's not going to grow year after year. It's a short-lived plant. So these plants like grapevines, think of peach trees, they're going to come back year after year. They're long-lived crops. Okay? So basically annuals, biennials, and monocarpic, those are all plants that after they produce seeds, they die. Okay, so that's normal. So we're not talking about those. We'll talk about those when we get to vegetables, grains, and all of this. So fruits have always been extremely important to human agriculture. Think about not just, think about the Garden of Eden, eating the forbidden fruit, but also think about all the things that we make from fruit. For example, olive oil and olive products. They've been around for thousands of years. And also things like alcohol. Alcohol is a humongous part of human culture and has everything to do with production, or a lot to do with production. And if you're interested in growing fruit, you should be studying the science of pomology. Pomology is the science of plants. Fruit crops, how they differ from our veggie crops, in general, tend to be a higher value crop. Think of how much you pay for tomatoes and avocados. By the way, tomatoes are a fruit crop because it's season, right? They're relatively higher price point per pound, and a lot of the agriculture produced here in California produces high value crops, usually exported out elsewhere. For example, we make fantastic grapes and fantastic everything. So that's. And the other thing about fruit trees is it takes a lot of work. Fruit trees are not like I said, not like a simple crop. They take years of planting. So that's why they're more expensive. You have to buy baby trees. They have to grow bigger. It takes longer. For example, let's say you planted a crop of bacon avocado, and all of a sudden tastes change, right? The market, people no longer want bacon avocados. They want Fuerte avocados. Well, guess what you have to do? You can't get rid of all your trees and wait 15 years to have a whole new crop of trees. You'll go out of business. You have to actually go in there and graft all your trees. So there's a lot more going on in tree crops. Oh. There you go. Tree crops. Sorry about that. So that is very different than our regular crop systems. There's a lot more work behind a tree crop system. So that's why they tend to be more expensive. And a lot of our fruit tree growers, especially locally, are what I would consider smaller farms, so under 40 acres. There are huge, gigantic, multi-hundred acre fruit operations, but they tend to be more in the Central Valley. Our local agricultural areas like under 80 acres. And there is also a shortage of fruit trees. Not so much in the wholesale sense that farmers can't get fruit trees, but there's such a huge demand. For example, the nursery we work in, we specialize in fruit trees and we can't sell enough of them. And they're fetching a very high price. I can't find enough people to grow me avocados to sell to the public. And I just can't. Trees come in, they're already sold. How fast. So that's it. If someone wants to start a nursery or get a horticulture, fruit tree is definitely where it goes. It's the only plant in your nursery that the bigger the plant gets, the more expensive it gets. Typically, that's me, sorry. It's happening. Typically, when you have a plant in a nursery and it gets bigger, it's increasing the price. You're losing money having to take care of it. And nobody wants a gigantic tomato plant. They want to buy a little tomato plant because they know it's cheaper than it grows. No one's going to pay $40 for a plant. Just not going to happen. But they will for an avocado. people say bigger avocado. Why? Because it's already fruity. So yes, there's kind of a fruit shortage, at least in my opinion, of quality fruit trees. That's the other thing. Talking about fruit trees that have been inspected that don't have diseases, that are actually what they say they are. Remember I talked about the guy bringing diseases from back east and growing it at the swap meet. The swap meet's usually not a good choice to buy fruit trees. Because some Joe Blow doing it in the backyard, he doesn't have quality control like a real licensed nursery. So that's what I'm talking about. So let's get to California. We are the largest producer of fruit in the United States by far. The estimates I'm giving you are 2015 estimates, which are mid-drought estimates. They've gone down about 10% since 2015, and they'll be back up probably this year. That's a drought estimate. So we're producing roughly 50% of all the fruits in the United States, imported and exported, both going in and coming out, about 50%. And for many crops like almonds, citrus, avocados, table grapes, raisins, mangoes, we provide nearly all of it. So, for example, mangoes, there are very few places you can go in the United States to get a non-imported mango. California is one of the few states that actually exports domestically grown mango. No. Wish you could, but you can't. So, which is interesting because other places like Hawaii and Florida, which can grow mangoes, don't export mangoes for different reasons. So that's fantastic, and no other state comes close by far to how many different types of products sold in California. Right now, there's huge production in all sorts of weird things you've probably never heard of, like goji berries, jujubes, things like longan and lychee and rambutan and jambu, all these weird new fruits that culturally brought in from different places, expanding very rapidly. Also think of just uses of fruits. Think of grapes. Like grape production, it's not just wine, right? We have table grapes, we have just raisins. Raisins alone is huge. But yet you have all these other things. You have juice grapes, different from table grapes to wine grapes. You have all these different categories of fruit. And that's actually another reason why there's so much fruit production. And a lot of times, like in this picture, this is an orchard, a winery, we have them mixed in. In California, wine grapes particularly have their own areas that they're grown in. So we call those appellations. So those are specifically for wine regions. We don't have those for any other crops, just for. Basically, that means if you want to grow wine grapes, you got to be in one of these designated regions. Kind of. It's just the way it is. I don't think so. Not this semester. Yeah. We could have raged one. Fantastic. Very impressive. Yes. Yeah. So we have all those different things and different fruit crops. Let's go to the next slide. So a lot of these crops are being specialty crops are being tested right here in Southern California. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'll talk about these dragons. Fruit trees, though, because they cover so much land, also are heavy on our resources. For example, almonds, according to some people, use almost 10% of our ag water, which is a lot of water. Remember, during the drought, people were like, no more almonds. Almond people. That's because there's so many acres of almonds. Just think there's like hundreds and thousands of acres of almonds. So they do use a lot more resources, typically water and space. However, in my opinion, that can all be fixed because we have new technology, which we're going to see in our field trip, smart watering systems, and also just the way we grow trees. We're becoming a lot more smarter in how we actually do these things, spacing, fertilizing, mulching, and all that type of thing. And that's making fruit production more efficient. And that's not just our physical resource, that's also spacing. So for example, avocado orchards, before 1995, they let the trees grow really big, and you had guys coming into the trees, after like 1995, most orchards chop their trees down and keep them only 10 or 15 feet high. They never become trees. That does two things: keeps it cheaper, keeps the trees smaller, uses less water because they're shading the ground, and you just need less fertilizer and all that different things. So just different techniques have increased our ability to grow more. Again, a lot of our small scale farmers are doing well in fruit production. Think of people at the farmers. Those are small scale growers, and they tend to find good outlets for their fruit. For example, one of the top crops right now, if you weren't going to grow medical marijuana, grow tomatoes. Organic tomatoes make a lot of money, a ton of money. If you go to the farmer's market when tomato season's out, price out a big tomato. It's going to cost several dollars, up to $6, $7 for one tomato. So it's a pretty good business to be in tomatoes and other things like that, off-season fruits as well. Think of berries. We all know berries are expensive. You know, blueberries are a high dollar crop. And I'm including them in here. I know we're going to have a lecture later on vine crops. We're going to talk about something different than that one. And our local desert area, Mojave Desert, is actually a better place to grow fruit trees than it is to grow vegetables. Fruit trees great up here. They actually grow all sorts of things up here: pistachios, apples, a lot of your stone fruits, peaches, a lot of things growing up here fruit-wise, and do fairly well as long as you have water. Southern California in general is absolutely fantastic. If you're a fruit tree crazy person, you would want to live down there, because like right in my neighborhood, I can go all the time. I wanted to. So, but up in here in the desert, it's mostly it's good for trees that require what we call chill, cold weather. The problem we have a lot of places is it's not cold enough to grow some of these things like apples. You go down the hill to Orange County, LA, you can only grow certain types of apples. And they're all not that great because they're bred for low chill. Up here, you have more choices for apples. Vice versa, so don't think and it goes the opposite way. It's too cold here to grow things like avocado. That change in the weather from really hot summers to cold winters makes good stone fruit that come from back in the cities. So that's fantastic. This is dragon. Dragon fruit is a crop from Central America, Mexico, that was popularized in South Asia. Now is produced pretty high here in Southern California. Out in the desert, but down in Riverside County. So we have a lot of crops. That's an example of a new crop that people are growing more and becoming more aware of. So let's talk about 2015. The reason why I took 2015 is it was kind of in the middle of the drought. Because as you see here, it's 17% lower than 2014. And the reason why production was 20% lower was from the drought. And if you looked at 2016 compared to 2015, it would be even lower. So that's because, remember, they had to restrict the use of water. I mean, they didn't grow as many crops. So this has reduced. I guess the last highest year was 2015. So ag has been going down since then. Hopefully a rebound. But like I said, it's pretty huge. So let's just talk about the top 6 crops: almonds, grapes, berries, tomatoes, walnuts, and pistachios, in that order. The first 4 are billion-dollar crops. That's a huge amount of crops. So you're looking at $5 billion for almonds, almost $5 billion for grapes. For the longest time, grapes have been the top, have taken the top spot, but recently, in the last 5 or 10 years, almonds have been in the top spot. And locally, you could probably correct me on that one, I would say pistachios cover the most acreage, and then you have stone fruits. I know down in that direction, the pear blossom and Lancaster, they, at least when I was growing up here, had a lot of stone fruit production. I haven't been that way in a while though. Jujubes. Jujubes. Bees. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It is. That's a lot of acres. 900,000 acres. So that's why it uses 10% of the water. If you imagine irrigating 900,000 acres of trees, that's a lot of trees. The heat. Very good. So nuts in general are pretty expensive. Again, it's production. He's talking about how they're sensitive. Something that's sensitive like a walnut, it can't be grown everywhere to high production. So where it can be grown, like in California, they do quite a big business of it. And a lot of those acreages 20, 30 years ago weren't trees. So just telling you how much ag changes. For example, I was just coming from an orchard where we do grafting, and the tastes and avocados are changing. People are not liking it used to be the less oil was more popular, but people really like the oily avocados, the fattening ones. So people are literally having to change their entire orchards out because you can't sell what no one's not going to buy. So we do things like grafting. That's the one good thing about fruit trees is we can still change them in the ground. It's not a dead end. So through things like grafting, basically grafting is making a clone, right, of a tree. So if I took an avocado, you have a fuerte avocado, and you plant that seed, you have no idea what it's going to turn into. Just like kids, every children you have some great kids, some good kids, right? So you plant that seed, you have no idea who the parents are or parents. You have very little idea what's going to happen. So that's not how they grow fruit trees. So they clone fruit trees. You have a fruit tree you like, they take a piece of that fruit tree and they put it on top of another one and they clone it. So all the fuerte avocados are all the same. They're all cloned. So that's what I'm talking about, just for your horticultural change. But there's your list of the big guys. And then here's specialty crops. So California leads the United States in all of these, except for coffee, but in all of these things. But all of these things are grown in California. We grow coffee in California. There's a coffee grower in, what is it? It's on the way to Santa Barbara. See, Carpentria, yes. Makes fantastic coffee. And that's interesting. So you can grow all sorts of stuff and things you haven't even heard of. One that's becoming really big now is olives for olive oil. A lot of acres, high intensity, and olives another good drought resistant crop. And in the low desert, you can't even find the mango trees. They're under so much surveillance and they're hidden and behind barbed wire and guards and all sorts of stuff. You can't even get to the mango trees in downtown Palm Springs. That's how valuable they are. But there are also lots of mango growers down there. My family has an 80-acre farm that's dates thermal, and I would love them to convert it over to mango. That's not going to happen because security. Because people will literally go in there, steal the trees and plant. By the way, one mango tree sells for $200. It won't give you fruit for like 8 years. Again, because nobody's growing them. Only have one source. When he's done, he's done. You have to wait forever. But these are all the different things that are some specialty crops. Think about also specialty citrus. Think of all the cuties. Right? Cuties are the orange things. Well, cuties, there's no such thing as a cutie. A cutie could be a different type of, it could either be a Dancy or some different type of mandarin. It depends on the time of the year. So basically they have like 6 different types of mandarins that produce these little cuties at different times of the year. So you're just getting a name basically. Just letting you know that, brand name, because People come all the time. I want a cutie. They're like, well, there's no such thing as a cutie. What time of the year do you want to eat that fruit? That's what I asked. Like, okay, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it. Some of the interesting things. Look at the walnut. So we grow 99% of all the walnuts grown in the United States. 90% of all the kiwi. 90% of plum. Lots of, you can't ignore the garlic and the celery, but the top ones are pretty huge. That's a pretty dominant market. And the other thing is, if we lost all the agriculture in California, Americans' diet would you would be hit hard, very expensive, and you wouldn't have as much diversity. And if you travel around the United States, sometimes you see that. Like if you go to different markets, you see how they're not as diverse as they are here. We get kind of spoiled here in California by having lots of different produce all around. And it's relatively cheap. So let's talk about what is required to do the production. I talk about lots of horticulture. So this is a horticultural intensive practice. Again, you have to have guys that know how to graft, which is, there's usually there's a grafting team. That's all they do is graft baby trees. You have to have people that know how to grow baby trees, constantly make new trees. Then the other one, you have to have people that prune, how to prune the trees, because you just can't put a tree in the ground and let it grow and be like, okay, we're done. It doesn't work that way. In nature, trees don't produce fruit for us. They produce fruit to make seeds. So we have to prune them and do all sorts of weird stuff to get good quality fruit. So it's an intensive operation, horticulture, labor-wise. Versus, let's say, crops like lettuce, where a machine plants it, and picking it, yes, can be done by people, but it's a relatively simple operation. Not a lot of weird horticulture going into producing things like crop, like lettuce and stuff like that. Whereas fruit trees, a little bit more in depth. And also, think about your marketing season. A lot of times, fruit tree varieties only make fruit one time of the year, for a certain amount of time. You're done. So if you are a farmer, you want to sell peaches as long as you can, and you're going to have to know what varieties to grow in your area. Start early, middle, and late. Right? So it's a little bit more complicated. So that's why we call it a little bit more horticulturally in depth. Then you have secondary businesses like wine production. Okay, so for example, growing wine grapes is, I forget the name. It's not viticulture. Well, it's viticulture, but then making the wine is something else. Makes sense? So growing the wine grapes is viticulture. You have to have all those people do grapes, take care of the grapes, learning how to do all the pests, and then you have a whole group of people that are taking those grapes and making them into wine, which is a whole different process. Still included though. Think of raisins. I hate raisins. Think of raisins. That is a huge crop of its own. Not fresh grapes, not wine grapes, but just the raisin aspect. The taking those grapes and putting them out in the sun or wherever they do it. They also are going to need some infrastructure, right? If you're growing a vine crop, like wine grapes, if you're going out to an orchard, they have to have them up on something. They're not just, on the ground or growing on trees. So you have to put in stakes. Fruit trees are staked when they're young. When you go out to a newly planted orchard, there's stakes. So someone has to go put all that stakes in there. So a lot more work on the fruit trees. And then again, we have to have something, lots and lots of bees. Fruit tree production bees are super important to fruit trees. I was in the Central Valley and there's these guys with like hives on trucks. Take them and they're being rented by these fruit tree people. They bring these bees and they drop them off and they go and they take them up and they move them to a different place. And it's really kind of fun. And so bees in its own is big business. Of course, bees are in trouble, as we know, but they're also fairly critical to fruit production. I mean, without any bees, there are no fruits. Say goodbye to all your sure. Almond trees. think there's lots of people out there with bee producing degrees. There's another good job, apiculture. Apiculture. Yes, and guess what? I think California has the most amount of bee species of all these things. Well, no, and also introduced ones. We have really good native bees that are also fantastic pollinators that we're learning about. Like for example, the bees that live in the ground. There's actually bees that burrow in the earth. They are super good at pollinating, and we're learning. There's new studies about how to attract them. You can actually build a bee box in your garden. You can go online and build a bee box to attract carpenter bees, which are other good sources.
Have an expert.
Yeah.
What about on there? Roberto's wife.
Yay.
Put him on the spot. You come on the
Talk
show
about bees.
and we'll talk about how we select plants to grow native hedgerow to promote native bee species specifically.
And see how sustainable that is?
And
Yeah.
she
Super.
didn't work on it. We've heard of it. She's very nervous about
Talking. So basically what she's doing is planting, they figure out what plants attract the bees, and they plant those plants around their orchards. It's kind of a no-brainer, but that's simple. So, one interesting thing I always figure out, like when I'm in the store, is like, how come all of the food I'm eating is from like Chile and Mexico? Well, because a lot of our food is exported in California. So like if you go into a market, a lot of times the food you're seeing there is not grown here. And remember how I talked about like eating local? That's somewhat the different dichotomy between a big supermarket and the farmer's market. If you don't shop at the supermarket, they don't care, right? They're making lots of money. If you buy one apple from a farmer's market, he's really gonna care. Because he's a small farmer, took him a lot of work to make that apple. This is the big something we have to change in our culture, is how much we're willing to spend for food and food quality. For example, in Europe, people are willing to spend more on food, higher food quality, closer food. And that's one of the things I think we're going to have to change to make it more sustainable in the future. But it all that comes into other questions of money and economics. Again, a lot of our, I don't think, you might know, how much of those almonds are exported? Exactly, and then when you go to the store and you look at Stater Brothers, and most of those almonds are Turkey or China. Yeah, exactly. Or now they are. A lot of times they aren't. Yeah.
Something happened in China.
No more almonds. That's not sustainable. Yeah. Yeah.
The expert said price will go down.
I didn't go down.
The price has gone up, and the average almond farmer
My question to my class is, why do you think almond crop, why are we eating so many almonds now? What happened? What happened? Almond milk, changes in diet, perception, right? So before, 10 years ago even, you didn't see as much almond milk in the store. Yeah, exactly. Now you go in and there's almond everywhere, which is a different thing. And also a lot of people didn't know about almond milk. Like, I think China's #1 consumer of almonds, that has historically not been almond. So that's what happens, globalization, change in society, change in awareness to crops. If you just looked at all the apples in the store, you might only think there's 5 or 6 types of apples ever, right? Green ones, red ones, well, you're a horticulturist. If you didn't know anything about plants, you just went to the store all the time, you would only see about a certain amount of apples, but there's lots of apples. Way more than that. Okay, let's talk about development. California has near places for fruit tree development. There are things like pluots, microphones, ink ribs, all that was developed a lot here in Central California. A lot of varieties of fruit from here. Think of fuerte, avocados, passes, all that type of stuff. We have a lot of research stations. These are places that are run usually by the University of California that do studies on trees. For example, there's an avocado research station in Irvine. There is another one in the Central Valley. There's several citrus stations. There's a cherimoya station in my neighborhood. Dragon fruit station not too far. So there's these different places where they trial varieties and see what does good. And the cool thing about California, in my opinion, like with the dragon fruit, the varieties that did good, they make them available to people in the business. People who want to grow them, people who want to sell them. And it takes a lot of the guesswork because then all I have to go is go to the UC research stations that I want to grow and sell what grows here. They've already done that hard work. Here you go. Here's the top 5, and you can buy the plants. It makes it really easy. That's what I think our agricultural economy really takes advantage of, in my opinion, how much research we've done. And we also have fantastic schools, UC Davis, Cal Poly, UC Riverside, which have been doing this for decades. These breeding and this pre-development from pretty much day one, a long time. So we're also very proud in California to have been research-based. And a lot of the time that technology that we call that cultural technology, stuff that we do, our way of doing things, we export that to other countries. And now lots of countries are adopting similar agricultural practices that we are. That's kind of like if you go to Cal Poly Pomona, you could take a fruit class and learn about all the fruits. You could take one of my favorite classes with post-harvest physiology. Was what happens to that fruit after it's picked? All the different things that happens to that fruit time, because growing the fruit was just growing the fruit. God forbid, the whole process of picking it, shipping it, and doing all sorts of other stuff. That's another whole volume. Amazing study. And also think of your secondary products. Tomatoes, huge secondary product market. Tomato sauce, ketchup, right? The majority of tomatoes are going into secondary products. I'm not like selling full tomatoes out in the store. Think of jelly and
And I just,
sure.
Another really emerging area is food safety.
Yes.
So what if these tomatoes here were contaminated with
Listeria.
colorants, and so they or salmonella or something like that. And so how that's handled and temperature control of these products being shipped,
Huge.
that's a huge emerging area where there's very few people food safety experts. Want to comment on that?
That's
Yeah.
the last and
Exactly.
specific clause.
Yeah.
And primary focus is tracking
Food.
every lot. Track what part of
Yeah. That's if you're going to look to go study that in school, it's post-harvest physiology.
I don't say the apple grower, that's become what primary. Had a problem with harvest. Then we said, easy to over
There you go. See.
and what turned out to be also had a problem with the house interview. Bias. Turns out that healthy. We started playing healthy. That's harvest.
And that's a good example of something relatively easy food, actually counts. So think about that, harvest physiology. But also think about another huge one is the beverage industry. Just think about all the beer and wine and juices and stuff. Sugar. Just sugars, different flavors. Flavor. The one company, what's it called? It's oh, that weird flavored water. La Croix right now is flavored with the meat. Now, is it the essential oils of in the rinds of these fruits? So huge. And then also a lot of the secondary business, which is interesting, is feed. A lot of the fruit business is very, very efficient because you would think, what do they do with all these smashed apples? All the apples mashed. Yeah. A lot of it's used secondarily as feed, animal, things like that. So that's a good. There's a fairly low waste business in my.
You got almond bulb.
Yeah.
Dairy cotton.
Exactly.
Cotton.
Conseed's a fertilizer. Yeah. And a feeding. Let's talk about Mojave Desert fruit production. This is Cadiz. Are we going to Cadiz?
We are going to.
Okay, so we are going to Cadiz. We are going to go see a really interesting kind of way in the middle of nowhere fruit production out in the desert. Again, all you need in the desert to produce good fruit is decent soil and water. The weather is actually pretty good. So crops that do fairly well in the desert: apples, peaches, pears, pomegranate, figs, almonds, plums, nectarine, apricots, jujube, goji berry, grapes, and berries. You can do all those really well. And then, like I said, you have decent soil and water. This picture here, you're seeing how they're irrigating with drip. Again, we'll talk about things like Netafin. We get closer there in technology and irrigation. There's another field for work, irrigation technology, people. It takes a lot of work and know-how to properly irrigate 40 acres of fruit trees. It used to be easy when you just flooded everything. Just a floodgate. It's not that easy anymore. You have to have guys out there, and repairing this stuff is a huge 24/7 everyday job because it's always something in that one. Making fruit more sustainable. Improvements, again, irrigation technology. For example, water sensing, like he was talking about, testing soils, testing water, knowing exactly what your plants need, instead of just blindly applying fertilizers or just doing things we used to do. We're a lot more specific. Where I talked about GIS technology and using satellites to use infrared to see how trees are doing in a field, I can go through and see through infrared to see what trees are photosynthesizing more or less, and which ones are more productive. Have this technology. We also, this field here has, don't see them, you can't see them, but they run chickens in the field, so they do, there's a lot more integration with fruit trees. You can do some animal ag and fruit tree ag. Did you see that when you were in Costa Rica? When I was in Belize, the government there, because they don't have as much land, they might do this in Costa Rica, but they're doing a fruit tree production and animal production in the same place. So they'll have like the fruit trees, and then they'll be raising pigs. And then what they'll do is they just move the pigs through the orchard. So like 1 week, the pigs are in this part of the orchard, and the next week, the pigs are over there. And then after the pigs they'll bring chickens. And then they'll kind of do this rotation of, I don't know what you call that, animal rotation, I guess. Integrated total crop rotation, in my point. It's crop rotation extreme because you're rotating animals into the trees, and it works out great. The chickens eat all the weeds, poop. The pigs, since they're like running around, cutting and stuff, like running into the dirt, they loosen it up. So really kind of interesting integrated systems. And again, lots of technology. Almost all the orchards have someone there, the agronomist, the person they call a certified crop advisor. Certified crop, I think I'm missing it. It's a CCA, certified crop advisor, that goes out and tells them, tests. For example, there's people that test the water coming out of the orchards for nitrates, so they can say, okay, you guys are fertilizing too much or not enough, because you can tell by what's coming out of the system, right? Coming out of the wastewater. So those are also high-paying jobs, and they're really interesting jobs. You're going to go out to different types of farms and whatnot. And they would be checking water quality, soil testing. Here's a question I have for you. Does the CP, because I'm getting my pest control advisor, is it you have to do one or the other, or can you do both? You have to have the PCA before the CCA.
Later on, American technical
Everything else. Okay. Ah.
In California, they couldn't agree.
This is
People in California, a lot of people, and I'm actually working on getting my CC. A lot of people have both of them. In other states,
It's just
you have a
the one.
CCA, you do everything.
So California is the only one with two, right?
Yeah.
Because I was researching this from Reproduction. Yeah, so we have two systems here, which is interesting. I think we're done with the time, aren't we? Are we?
Yeah, we're,
Oh, we were finished. Okay. Thank you guys for staying late. Yeah, that's it.
fine. You call us.